Okay, so thank you very much for coming along tonight to this paper on how you're going to adapt to a 2020 environment for horticulture. I guess what sort of drove me to do this was I've been talking to a number of businesses around where we're heading and what we're doing in horticulture, and I think there are a number of trends, and we've done some trends on the five major trends and robotics that I see impacting on horticulture. But I think there's a bigger picture to that, and then I also wanted to talk more than about the strategy. So I want to highlight some of the trends as probably identified sort of 9 or 10 key trends. And then I want to talk about what are some of the strategies that you might be able to apply in your business. And there'll be a basket of them that are going to help you to take advantage of some of these things moving forward. I guess the strategies and trends we talk about, they're not necessarily comprehensive. So as my thoughts, so after sort of 30 years as a management consultant, and some of the strategies are really focused on making the best of business. So I see it's particularly around business in the Australian market. So horticulture, this paper and this presentation, I was really focused around businesses in that Australian market. So that's where we're going. This webinar is going to be a quick summary. I'm probably going to struggle to do it in the 30 minutes that we've allotted, considering I'm way behind schedule, so I really apologise for that. We will record it, so if you have to leave early, I appreciate that. We will put the recording up on the website. We will send you out a copy of the final paper in the next week or so, in the next few days, and also a copy of the link to the recorded webinar. So there'll be some stuff we will send out to you. And there's a lot more detail in the paper. When I say it's a paper, we're going to put it together as an ebook format, so it'll have a combination of text and video and images to make it quite an interactive document rather than sort of a dull read. So that's my plan there. So let's get into the topic and start talking about what's important. So moving forward, one of the things that I've talked about in the past is this notion of this VUCA business, and where we're talking about an environment moving forward that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And then if we add the velocity, the rapid change that's coming, I think you're going to see that going forward there's quite a rapidly changing business. My sort of personal philosophy is that there's so much happened in the last 5 years. So people have said to me, why 2020? It's not that far away, really. Well, if you look at what's happened to us in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of change in that time. Some things that spring to mind for me are, 2007, not that long ago, Steve Jobs came out with the first iPhone, and that fundamentally changed the landscape. We've had 2010, he came out with the iPad, so 10 years ago. 5 years ago. We've only had high-speed data, so 4G data internet in some areas. Some of us still have steam-powered internet, but you get that. That's only been around since 2011. Things like social media, like Facebook and LinkedIn and those sort of things, really only appeared less than 10 years ago. And they've really come into fruition in the last 5 years. So based on that, I think we're going to see a lot of change. And 2020 is not that far away, but there's still potential for lots and lots of change in that space. So if we look at the key drivers, and what I've done is identify sort of 10 key trends or issues, and under each of those trends, I'm going to talk about some strategies that you might be able to apply to address these in your business. So I'll go through them fairly quickly. At the end of the presentation, we'll have some time for some questions. Also happy to take back your comments and feedback, and if needs be, I'm happy to open up the microphones and have people ask some questions and post some comments as we go. All right. So our first key trend is about the consumer is still the king or the queen, and I think this is really important because the consumers are really moved into the driving seat. We've long alluded to the fact that consumers are out there driving things, but I think in the last 5 years we've seen that there's been, they're really started to drive the market in many ways and really started to take control. I think the big chain stores, the supermarkets, and the house and garden places often sit in the back seat and drive fairly carefully, but they're largely driven by the consumer. Although the big supermarkets tend to be the gatekeepers of what actually gets in front of the consumer, and we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. Um, Chris Anderson, in his book, it's a great book called The Long Tail, talks about how um, how it's possible to build really profitable businesses around niches driven by the internet, social media, and e-commerce. So we can actually start to aggregate a global business of a niche that was, I guess, disparate and spread around. It's now part of, it's easily accessible for most people. So the first strategy, so there's sort of 4 strategies here. First one is we've got to understand the needs of our customer. And I think the first question here is, who is your customer? What do they demand from you? You know, there are really strong consumer trends out there in the marketplace at the moment. You know, lots of trends around health and wellness are driving a sector of the market. Evidence, you know, that's around paleo diets and gluten-free and, you know, celebrity chefs and superfoods and those sorts of things. So there's a strong market there. You know, it's organic food and all that sort of stuff. And it's driven largely by health and wellness. But a larger proportion of consumers are also driven by convenience. People are getting busier and busier and have less time for anything, but people still want to eat high quality, you know, good quality food in their homes, but they want to eat it cheaply and quickly, and they often don't have the time to prepare for it. So, you know, trends like meals ready to eat, meal assembly, which is like taco kits and, you know, pasta sauces and those sorts of things, pre-processed things, you know, leaf salad, salad leaves and stuff in bags, all those sorts of trends are all aimed at convenience, as well as frozen pizzas and all the other stuff. But I'm thinking sort of about produce stuff here. So, you know, there's lots of trends in there that we should be looking at. And I guess it's about making sure that you get in alignment with them. Now, this is not just restricted to food. You know, consumers and customers are really keen to, you know, there's been a big drive towards green space and better connection with the environment and better connection with all these things. So connection is a real driver with this. As we seem to get more industrialized and urbanized, people want more and more connection with the source of their food and their products, and they want to know that they're all grown by people who love them. So really important that you understand how can you take advantage of some of these trends. Now, your customer may not be the consumer. Your customer may very well be the next person in the supply chain who eventually supplies the customer. So you may be part of a bigger supply chain who then supplies to the supermarkets who finally supply through to the customer. So understanding the needs of your customer is not just about understanding consumer needs, it's about understanding the needs of the next part in the chain for you. And what do they want from you and how can you deliver that? And you know, we'll talk a bit about competitive advantage in a while, but that's really important that you understand that. The second thing is around brands. So the strategy here is about developing or aligning yourself with a strong brand. So consumers and you know, retail stores, all that sort of stuff are drawn to powerful brands. The powerful brands, the big strong brands, get more premium shelf space, they get more sales. Therefore, that drives the cycle of them having more shelf space and everything else. So it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So it's really important that we understand that. And if you look at the supermarkets, I think you're going to find the big players will still continue to dominate. They might lose some market share to the smaller supermarket chains, but ultimately they will still retain the lion's share. And they're going to want to work with big, strong brands that can deliver that. So you may need to either align yourself with a brand or develop your own brand. Yeah. Or you may have a hybrid model. So you may deliver part of your product through to a direct-to-consumer model, which we'll discuss in a second, under your own brand or in association with others. And then you may actually also deliver a large proportion of your product through to a supply chain which supplies through to the supermarkets or food service or something else. But, you know, strong brand is about having connection with customers. It may not mean the consumer doesn't understand your brand. It's important that the customer understands your brand. So, you know, I guess the question I'm starting to think of is how can you leverage your brand and your connections to actually start to understand the needs of the consumer. Strategy C is about a direct-to-consumer channel, and many people now, I think the internet has given lots of people the ability to go direct-to-consumer. So e-commerce and all sorts of things give you an opportunity to go direct-to-consumer. And for many small businesses, this is really an option. And I think this is often a strategy that is far more available to the smaller operator rather than the big operators, because it's simply about scale matching. So if you're a big business, you're normally interested in people who can take semi-trailer loads and pallet loads of your product rather than sending a carton at a time to particular individuals. And it applies into value adding as well. If you've got a big product line, a specialized product line, then the waste or the low value product that you would normally consider value adding to, it can be a significant part of the market. And I've seen situations where, with big producers, if they converted their byproducts and stuff into a value-added product, it would actually swamp the market, which would drive down prices, reduce profitability of the value-added sector, all that sort of stuff. And it's a bit of fiddling around to do it for a smaller amount. So often these strategies, that are direct-to-consumer strategies and stuff, are really focused around the ability of smaller businesses who can be nimble and responsive to the needs of farmers. The last one then is the leveraging the urban consumer, and I've talked about this in previous webinars where, Australia is one of the most urbanised countries in the world. 89% of our population live in our urban centres, and more people are moving into them. As we see higher and higher housing prices in the city, more trouble with transport and commuting, we're finding that the living in an urban apartment, it becomes a reality for many people. The problem with that for those people is, it's not really a problem, but the issue for that is that they don't have as much storage in their apartments for food and other things, and sometimes meal preparation space is limited. So often they are looking for convenient solutions that are scaled for their purpose. So smaller portion sizes, and for products that they can assemble easily and do. They won't be interested in taking home 3 kilograms of potatoes because they can't store them and or eat them. So they want to buy single portions of potatoes or 2 portions of potatoes to eat. All really important. Also really linked to things like gardens and those sorts of things. So I think there's going to be real opportunities for businesses that can tap into the urban consumer, help them with balcony garden kits and vertical gardens, and the services that go with supporting that, and also the varieties, I guess. So I think there are real opportunities for smart and savvy producers to actually get out there and supply that urban consumer. Again, you're going to need to link to a brand. That's part of the direct-to-consumer model. That does that, and to do it, you're going to have a real understanding of the needs of the customer. So, getting your head around those consumer needs is really important. Second key trend is about leveraging the global market. There's a couple of things here. I think that we're seeing a real change in globalization. We've been talking about it for the last 20 years, but I have to say in the last 5 years, it's really accelerated. We're seeing more and more competition from imported product, but we're also seeing more and more opportunities for Australian businesses to export and take on these markets. Some of this has been driven by the great work done by industry groups and government in terms of opening up trade with and market access to various markets like China and India. And as they come on stream, there are going to be great opportunities there in there for Australia. So, I guess with, export markets, we're well positioned in Australia to take advantage and to supply the Asian market. This will require, I guess, a change in attitude and approach for us. So we have a reputation as being fair weather traders. So many people will only trade on the export market when the domestic market takes a bit of a dive. So for many people, that's a challenge. For others, it's they're there in the market full time, and they will pick up the benefits of those those consistent supplier relationships. So part of it is we've got to be consistent suppliers into those markets. We've also got to take a long-term approach to building relationships, because in the past we've tended to do the trade show luncheon sort of method of building relationships. And I think just like your customers here in Australia, you're going to need to spend a bit more time building strong relationships with those export markets, particularly business to business and family to family relationships are going to be fairly important. In terms of tapping into the global market, we're also going to need to tap into the global worker marketplace. A recent TED talk by a gentleman called Rainer Strack, a German, has put up some interesting statistics which show that by 2030 there will be a shortage of skilled workers, a global shortage of skilled workers, and by 2020 this will be well underway, and many of our major trading partners will be looking for skilled workers to supplement their workforce. This is going to put pressure on us, to retain and hang on to people in Australia, as our best and brightest will be in demand globally, but also in terms of assimilating and bringing in foreign workers into Australia, and that's going to require some different skill sets and some different ways of managing people and understanding it. So cultural sensitivity, language barriers, all those things are going to need to be addressed for you and your business if you're going to take advantage of that. So I think that's really important. And attracting and retaining quality employees is a really big part of this strategy. So, this sort of thing. So we're going to need to think very carefully about how we attract and retain quality employees. Now, Rainer Strack in his analysis also did a survey of 200,000 global workers and looked at the things that they're looking for in a job. Salary was number 8. So they're not necessarily in it for the money. The most important things to them were an appreciation for their work, good relationships with colleagues, good work-life balance, and good relationship with their superior. So what that's telling me is there are a lot of soft elements that we need to start focusing on if we're going to attract people. So it's not just all about paying them money. We're going to need to think about how we attract them and how we hang on to them. And I think we'll go back to the days of where the HR department was all about looking after our workforce and making sure they were happy and well trained and everything else, as opposed to being more about compliance. And that's just a fact of the environment they're in rather than the people in HR. But I think we'll see more and more emphasis on this retention and attraction strategies. I guess the other thing to think about is that employees are attracted to strong brands, particularly Gen Y, very attracted to strong brands that have a strong sense of purpose. And so you might want to think about how can you leverage your brand in attracting people, and then what are the strategies you're going to put in place to attract and retain quality employees from Australia or from around the world. Okay, so we'll keep moving on. Third trend is about adding value. So we need to add value to our products and services. Nothing new here, but I think it's about developing a clear product strategy based on your competitive advantage. Too many businesses that I see don't have a clear understanding of their competitive advantage. There are too many Me Too businesses that are just doing exactly what the competition are doing with little points of differentiation that mean anything to the customer. And there are plenty of people out there who are planting crops and growing produce and putting in new orchards and all sorts of things for products that are already oversupplied in the market. And it's because they haven't thought through their product strategy in enough detail. And part of that is understanding your competitive advantage. Competitive advantage, we've discussed this in other webinars as well. It's about two things. It's about understanding the factors of your business that add value to your customer. So really two important points there. They add value. So what are they doing? And it's to your customer. So you want to add value to the customer, and then you want to be able to do that better than the competition. So it's about focusing on things that are really important to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what your competitive advantage is. And there are a number of examples of it, and we'll go through those in the paper. But there's some great examples of how you can focus on your competitive advantage and develop a clear product strategy to take your business forward. The second part of this is about value adding, and again, this is something that's been talked about, but there are a number of different ways to value add, and very quickly, I've developed I guess a model. There's sort of 6 layers of value adding that you can look at, from experience right through to transformation. And the point of these is that you can do some of these in concert, or you can do them singly. But as you move up the column from experience to transformation, there's normally increasing value or increasing price at the far end. There's normally more cost involved. There's normally more complexity involved in doing it, but there's normally a lot less competition, because the barriers to entry are higher the further you move through. Now, some of them you may actually do in concert with other strategies here. But for our argument's sake, let's just go through a couple of them. Experience is about changing the experience for the consumer. So that's pick your own, home delivered, pot your own sort of stuff. Companion stuff is actually about adding other products into the mix. So you have a salad mix or a strawberry cream mix, all those sorts of things. So there's different ways of adding companion products. Packaging is about pre-packaging. We can talk a bit about baby carrots and how they've done a great job with that, but it could be also about single serve potatoes and other things that we've talked about. So packaging is really important. In terms of quality, that can be about just differentiating your business in terms of quality. So that could be having a uber quality, so extremely high quality, or again, it could be low quality. It could be delivering large plants, small plants, advanced plants, or whatever. There's simple processing, which is, like flavored nuts. So you might have a wasabi flavored nut that you might have. It could be washed and peeled and packaged in some way. And then the last one is where you completely transform that product, and that's things about, freeze drying, or ice creams, or jams, wines, and flowers. And the guys at Pressure Pack have done a great job with that, with their Avo Fresh product, where they've taken avocados and done them. But understanding your competitive advantage and then building that in with value adding is really important. Something dropped through my email today from in terms of competitive advantage and differentiating. It's everybody knows that, say, olive oil is it's not one of those things that gets better with age. So the fresher you can eat it, the better it is. Drink it or use it, the better it is. Sorry, not too many people drink their olive oil. The you can use it, the better there is. But and here's an organisation that will crush it and ship it to you within 36 hours of crushing. So you're getting your olive oil as fresh as possible. Well, what a great competitive advantage that is, and combined with a value adding thing. So they've got a clear understanding of what their product strategy is. All right, let's move on. Cheap, powerful technology. I've talked about robots and data and all that sort of stuff. I think the important thing here is that we need to leverage data to make better decisions. We have so many probes and sensors and things that can give us so much data. If we're not careful, we can be bombarded with it and locked and lose the data and the information. So how do we convert data into information that you can use to make better decisions in your business? Absolutely important. I've got a feeling that a good data analyst is going to be part of your team of advisors that you need to have in your business. The second one then is about increasing the level of automation. And as I've discussed in the past, I think Moore's Law is alive and well in the robotics industry and automation. And we're going to see cheaper, faster, more powerful robots in the future. When we think of robots, I'm not thinking of C-3PO or the robot from Lost in Space. I'm not thinking of humanoid robots. I'm talking about small, independent, economical, single-purpose robots that we put out in the field and run around and kill weeds. Solar powered, charged by day, kill weeds by night, sort of operations. I also see exoskeletons, so there's already testing this in the military. So people involved with lifting and those sort of things are productivity issues with being able to sustain that for long periods of time, but also safety issues. And these exoskeletons you actually wear, and they're basically robots that you wear, and you can pick up and lift things. So everybody's seen Avatar, the movie. There's sort of that style of thing in there. Probably not on that scale. The other thing is mobile work platforms that then will enable us to combine robotics with people to get better productivity out in the field and in tree crops and those sort of things. This will enable us to have higher heights, because tree crops are often limited by the height at which people can work at. If we can use robots and automation to help us, harvest at higher and higher tree levels, then that will certainly reduce our cost, increase productivity, and drive things for us. So lots of stuff there around technology. In terms of boosting productivity, I think it's important that we start to introduce lean thinking into your business. It's been used in the manufacturing industry for a number of years to increase productivity, but it doesn't have a big penetration into horticulture. I think there are real opportunities to do a lot more with lean thinking and lean manufacturing tools in horticulture. Our experience is that 20 or 30% of the cost of your business will be tied up in waste and inefficiency. Now, you can't get rid of all of that, but you can certainly give it a good go. The second thing is utilization of assets. So one of the things I see all the time particularly on farms is large packing sheds and cool rooms and all this sort of activity, big sheds, everything that are used for 3 or 4 months of the year and then stand dormant for the rest of the time. So how can we make better utilization of this existing infrastructure is really important. And capacity sharing is something that's a bit in vogue at the moment. If you've seen the press around Uber, which is a way of people using spare capacity in their personal cars to become taxis, or Airbnb, if you're traveling, it's worth having a look at, where people, if they have spare rooms or apartments or houses, can rent them out short term to people using basically a social media approach. So that's peer-to-peer utilization of capacity. I'm thinking about business-to-business things. So how can we make better use of our existing infrastructure? How can we repurpose it, reformat it, reconfigure it to do other things with it when it's not going to be used for, and it's not being used for our primary purpose. The wool industry has been doing it for years with wool sheds and stuff that convert into machinery sheds as soon as they're finished shearing. So horticulture needs to think through some of these things. Other one, really important one, is about funding growth, and I think there's a lot of standard ones. The traditional way of doing things is to borrow debt, but as soon as you run out of debt, then you need to start looking at equity. Now, the internet has given us rise to things like crowdfunding and other ways of getting funding from non-traditional sources. So that's worth looking at, particularly if you're in a startup phase or a new product phase or something else, and you'd like to get some venture capital in to help you that way. The other thing is equity, and as companies move to Australia, they're going to seek equity in Australian businesses to secure their supply chains and minimise their risks and those sorts of things. And they will seek to take equity in existing businesses rather than buy them outright. They'll buy them outright in some cases, but in other ways they'll go into equity partnerships because they still need people to run the businesses. Now, for some businesses, this is going to be a great strategy. For others, they'll find it too confronting. I think the thing is just not be focused on the money. Look for smart investment in your business. So you want investors who are going to bring something else apart from just cash in your business. That can be expertise or networks or other things to help you drive that. But the big thing is that if you really want to grow your business and take on some of these market opportunities, then you're going to need access to capital. What are some of the smart ways that you can do that? One of the big drivers is around business model innovation, and I guess excuse me, the preceding strategies that we've been talking about have a lot of them have been around different elements of this business model, and pardon me. And if you look at Alexander Osterwald has done a great business model here. It's a really simple thing. It's a business model canvas. We've talked about it before at previous webinars, but it's really powerful because it gets you to focus on moving through the sort of 9 key elements that they talk about. So ranging from who are our customers and what are the relationships with them, or what's our value proposition, to what are the channels we're going to use to get to market, which all help you build our income or revenue streams. If you then move from the value proposition through what are the key activities and the key partners that we're going to need to do these things, coupled with the key resources, it helps you build your cost structure. It's a really simple exercise, really easy to do, but it's really quite powerful in the insights that it gives you around your business. It's just the tool. The main thing we want to get out of it is what changes do we need to make to your business model in order to be competitive in 2020? Again, we'll explore that in a bit more detail in the white paper. Managing change. So all this is about managing change, and I think the last point here is that we really need to be careful that we're managing change well. We found that the probability of success on change programs has been about 30%. That means there's a 70% probability that you will fail. Chris Mason, the head of Mindshop, and we've done webinars on this one as well, has spent the last 8 years analysing businesses as part of a PhD thesis, and has identified the key areas that are responsible for change success. And we've got a great model around that. The three key areas, which we've broken down into sort of 10 areas in total, but 3 key areas are readiness. So how ready are you for the change? Do you have the capability, the personal and the organisational capability to deliver that? And do you have the right beliefs in terms of the focus of the team and other people around you to pull it off? And just imagine what you can do if you can lift your probability of success to much higher than that traditional 30%. All of a sudden, you start doing far better return on investment. There's a whole heap of things. So managing change in a rapidly changing environment is going to be very, very important. All right, so they're the top trends. So just to recap, the top trends were the consumers, is still the king. We need to leverage the global marketplace. We need to add value to our products and services. We need to look at cheap and powerful technology and how it's driving change. We need to be boosting productivity and quality. We need to think about innovative ways to fund the growth in our business. We need to make sure we've got a strong, powerful business model. And lastly, we need to manage the change because there's lots of it coming and we need to be across it. I won't go through all the strategies, but we identified a whole heap of strategies here, and some of these will be relevant to you, and others won't. That's okay. It's about being comprehensive and having a look at it. So the way I look at it is you've got sort of 3 choices of what you can do from now. You can ignore what we've talked about today and continue doing what you've always been doing. So that's fine. You can be confident that you're on the right path and that you're going to be successful and continue to refine your offering and build your business as you can go. Or number 3 is you can realise what you're currently doing will not sustain your business in 2020 and make some rapid changes. So they're the sort of 3 options. I guess I'm sort of thinking then that the process should be, particularly if you're not in option 1, you're in option 2 where you're looking at things. I would review the strategies. So we'll send you a worksheet out with the recording and the white paper. But I want you to review the top strategies that we've put there. I then want you to rate them in your business in terms of the 2020 impact of them. So if you implemented them, what would be the impact on your business and how easy would it be to do? And if you scored both those out of 10, you'd come up with a score out of 20 that you would then give an indication of the strategies that are going to have the biggest impact on your business and are going to be the easiest or the lowest cost for you to do. Ease and costs are linked but not necessarily the same. So what we want to do there is to make sure that we're doing something that gives us the biggest bang for the buck. So let's not start with world peace. It might have a great impact, but it's going to be very hard to do. So let's not start with world peace or world hunger. Let's move to something a bit simpler, like maybe working on your technology strategy. Select the top 3. You might even just want to focus on the top 1. And then I would develop some action plans for what you're going to do in the next 90 days to progress that topic. So what can we do in the next 90 days to drive this and make it happen? So they're my sort of priority actions. And if we had a bit of time, I was going to give you the time to do those. But I don't think we have had the time to do that. So we might just skip it and move on. So the next steps in this process, for us, we're going to circulate a copy of the white paper in the next week. We're also going to prepare a short summary version of that and a short summary video, so it's a bit easier to digest. And I'd really like your feedback. So happy to have your feedback, either tonight, or I'm happy for you to email them to me, as you go. So the feedback questions I'm really interested in are there any key trends that you think are missing? Do the strategies make sense? And possibly what are the priorities for you in your business? So they're the sort of questions that I'd like to ask. If anybody wants to punch up a question or give me any feedback on that stuff now, that'd be fantastic. But I know we're sort of nearly over time. We're way over time, so if you have to go, that's okay. Just while you're thinking and maybe maybe putting some stuff up. Our next webinar, which I promise will be on time, is on Wednesday the 3rd of June, and we'll cover developing a social media strategy. So we're going to talk there about really understanding social media. I find too many people don't really understand how to use it and what are the different elements and how do we make it critical in our business, and where should our focus be. So we're going to cover off that on the 3rd of June. All right. I've got some questions popping up here. It's a good question, Carrie, around social media. So what's the role of social media in today's strategies? I see social media is critical in I guess, the key strategies around communicating with the consumer and building, a strong product offering. So particularly important in terms of marketing and building that relationship with consumers. Is really what I see social media in. It allows you to build your brand and allows you to connect with consumers and understand what they really want. So, it feeds really nicely into the strategy. And I think for many businesses, it's a key thing moving forward. Clean and green a driver. Yes, it is. Ben really is a driver. Again, in that consumer space and the export space, I think it's really important. Australia has a good reputation as a clean, green environment. You've got to be a bit careful with that, but certainly a lot of the information that's being a lot of the current growth is around in Asian markets, particularly say in China, is around the fact that we are seen as being clean and green. But we've also had competitors in that space. The Kiwis have a pretty strong role in there as well. But I think it's something you can really leverage off. I was in Tasmania the other day, and I really think that it's important that we build on that, fantastic clean green image that the Tasmanians have as well. But all of Australia has that image. Need to build it into that discussions with the consumer about leveraging ourselves into the global market and then adding value to our products and services. So it's really important part of that. Comment from Paul here. He's saying it's really important with the brand. He said he's in Sri Lanka at the moment, and the apple he is eating has a sticker on it that says "Apples from Italy." Okay, the brand is Italy. So the Italians have taken that brand and branding Team Italy. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Yes, Sue, a really good comment there. So Sue's comments about she's concerned about the use of robotics decreasing the role for humans and severely disrupting our society and creating even more of an issue between haves and have-nots. It's not something that's been currently discussed. I think it has. I really don't think that robotics are going to replace reams and reams of humans. I think they will have their place, but I don't see the robot farms of the future. I see them replacing equipment and some other things. But remember, if you look at Rainer Strack's thing, he's saying by 2030 there will be a labour shortage, particularly in skilled labour, we're going to have more and more trouble filling that. So I think robots have a place, but I don't think they're the be-all and the end-all. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we replace everybody with a robot, because there are plenty of jobs that a robot won't be able to do. But I think it's a great point, Sue. Thank you. Ben, I do see drone technology. So Ben, we talked about robots. You see drone technology in there as well. Yes, I do. I see drones and still probably have a laugh about this, but I see drones really as a really important part of that sensor technology. So I see they're a big part of data collection and letting us have a better understanding of our business. And particularly what's going on out in the field. So I think they're going to be really important. The trick is going to be how do we leverage them to make some real money out of them. So understanding the technology, using near infrared to understand growth rates and what that means in our paddocks and how we can adjust that, I think is going to be really important. And I think it will be drones in concert with other probes and sensors and weather stations and other things that will give the real competitive advantage. So yeah, great question. Thank you. I think they're really, really important. All right. Thanks for your feedback, Andrew. I really appreciate that. Carrie's made a comment. How important is an individual business's brand when they are part of a larger supply chain? I think it's where you focus that brand, Carrie. So for me, it's your brand is important, but it's important to your customers. So you may not have a brand that the consumer recognises. I get that. So not everybody's going to deal with the consumer. And the consumer will not recognise them. Lots of the cases, the supermarkets actually won't let us individually sticker or brand produce and those sorts of things. So the only way you can do that is to value add and move up the value chain a bit to get some branding at that level. And for many businesses, that's difficult. It's going to be very difficult for them to do. So, but your brand, if you like, within a part of your supply chain is going to be really important. So you want to have a business that's recognised for certain things, even within your supply chain. And, I see clients where we deliver to larger aggregators and do those sorts of things who have a strong brand and they're well recognised in that supply chain for, particular things. So they have a really strong competitive advantage over some of the competition. They're often the go-to people and that sort of stuff. So I think delivering that brand is really important. It's also a bit like a personal brand. So, in business, I often talk to managers and executives about different things, and we talk about then what's your personal brand, what do you stand for within this organisation, and how do you want to be perceived by your colleagues. It's a similar concept to that. I hope that helps. Thank you, Rowena. Essential elements of establishing a brand. I think we could do a whole other webinar on that, Sue. But, initially you've got to have a bit of a brand personality. You've got to understand what it is you want to stand for and what your competitive advantage is and why people should be buying your product. And those sorts of questions are really important. And then there's a whole brand methodology about that. So we might talk some more about that. And we've had, if you go and look at one of the webinars that Jim, I've just gone blank, that Jim did for us just a little while ago, on the thing, he started talking about how you use brand, and we might get both Jim and or James Atkins back to talk to us more about branding and stuff. So my plan is out of this sort of white paper that this will spring off a whole heap of webinars that we'll run around these topics and start to give you some more insights into that. I know that's not a great answer, but we might as well bring the experts in to help us. Yep. Peter, thank you. How can a horticulture business get the consumer to appreciate the costs of production and therefore the true value of a product, and how does business adapt to a chosen strategy if the trend changes direction quickly? So there's two questions there. The first one is that the consumer really doesn't understand your cost of production and the value of it. Part of that is driven by the supermarket's policy. So supermarket policies and competition. We've trained the consumer to expect higher and higher quality at lower and lower prices. It's not just restricted to horticulture. It is really across a whole range of other businesses as well. Look at cars and lots of stuff. The cost of cars is actually dropping. You get far, far better quality cars than you've ever got now for less and less. So all the manufacturing industries are under the same pressure, constant pressure to reduce the cost of production without necessarily increasing the price. So it's all, and so I think one of the things we have to think about is that the model is often around lower prices. Therefore, we've got to think about what are our strategies to differentiate our product in the market. And I'd be looking to things back like the strategies around consumers and export markets and those sorts of things, and branding to drive that. How does a business adapt to a chosen strategy if the trend changes direction quickly? I think part of that is monitoring trends and what's happening and starting to think about them well before. Some of the challenges with horticulture are that sometimes we have quite long lead times on things, so you can't just throw an avocado tree in the ground and expect it to grow really quickly. So there's a long lead time on some of these things, and some of my clients we're nurseries and those sorts of things. We're trying to look at trends and second guess where consumers are going. The big problem with that is they sometimes get it wrong. And it's hard to know. The other thing is that the supermarkets are often as I said, the gateway or the gatekeepers to things, and they drive some of the trends and I guess let different products in and out of the supermarkets. But it's very, very difficult. So part of it is being flexible, thinking forward, regularly updating your strategic plans and thinking ahead and looking at what's happening in the marketplace and around you, so you've got better insights. I think it's also a bit to do with information on things better. I know that's not a great answer, Peter, but there's no simple solution for it. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much. That's all the question. Paul's made a great comment here. Consumers and customers don't understand our costs. In fact, they don't care, nor should they. It's about that we're in business and we're delivering a product to them. It's about generating value. So for me, it's about how do we generate value in the marketplace that consumers are prepared to pay for, and that's that competitive advantage model. All right, thank you very much for your comments and your feedback there. As I said, we'll be circulating. Sorry, I'm just reading some of the comments here. Thanks very much for your thoughts. We'll be circulating the white paper and some things around. As I said, I'll try and make it as interactive as possible, so I'll put videos in it. I'll link into relevant webinars and other things where we can, and short videos, just so that it's not all reading. And look forward to seeing you again. Our next webinar's gone on the Wednesday, the 3rd of June at 5:30 p.m. Sydney time, around social media strategies and how we drive those. If I can be of any assistance to you, and I've got a number of people asking me to see if I can work with them on their strategies and develop their plans. As part of the link that goes out with the webinar, we will send you a link where you can log on the internet, find a time that suits you, and book a time for us to have a phone call and discuss your needs and whether we can be of any help to you. All right, thanks very much, guys. Appreciate your support today. Apologies for getting started late. That won't happen again. Thanks very much. We'll leave it there.